Today we're going to give you a close-up look at 3 different intercom-based communication system, headsets, whatever. These things will save your marriage if you work with your wife, or they'll save your relationship with your coworker. There's a lot of similarities and there's several differences. We're going to use background noise with the tractors here to try to test and illustrate what these are capable of and what they're not. Let's get started. Now, none of this video is sponsored. These products, we bought these 2 products, the SENA products, years and years ago. Stihl sent us these products probably 3-4 years ago with no obligation. We've used them off and on ever since. We have the most experience with this Stihl product, but I don't consider it sponsored at this point. They no longer work with us, haven't worked with us for a couple of years now. We're going to be showing you 3 specific products today: the Stihl Advance Procom, the SENA or SENA, SENA Expand Mesh, and the SENA TuffTalk-M. I'm wearing the SENA TuffTalk-M right now. I was wearing the Advanced Procom from Stihl during the introduction. We're going to try to use the audio from each one of these throughout the video so that you can kind of evaluate the audio quality in different situations and scenarios. When we change, we'll try to list the change and what device we're getting the audio from here in the lower third of the screen. For a little behind the scenes, recording from any of these is not easy. Okay, so we had to use some tricks, and we're actually using another SENA-based product with some jury-rigged cabling that we've got up into our audio system to do the recording. So you're not hearing necessarily exactly the same thing that someone else is going to hear in their headset. In some of our analysis, anecdotally, we thought what you're hearing may be better than what we actually hear in the headsets, but it's so anecdotal that we don't know how to capture that. Now, this is the Expand Mesh. It's a little different style. It's an on-the-ear style. It offers no hearing protection. We'll get into that more in a minute. But you can tell the audio quality difference immediately, at least in a quiet environment like we are right now. I'm going to use this to go through some overview of these technologies. There's 2 main competitors in this space. There's a Cardo technology, and then there's the SENA technology for the actual mesh intercom systems. I'm not really going to try to articulate what's different technically about them. You can go elsewhere to find that information. This technology first came to practical usage in the motorsports, motorcycles usually, in that industry. People would put this technology inside the helmets, and it was marketed to group riders. They want to ride together. They've got some distance between them, but they want to communicate with each other. Sometimes they even want to play the same music and share the same music across the entire mesh intercom, just so that they can socialize, right? I mean, that's what they're out there on their bikes for. As time has gone on, these technologies have progressed more toward industrial use, and so that's kind of where we are now. And I'll just say, from a summary standpoint, this has really helped Christy and I, as well as some of the other people we've had in our videos, just for communication purposes. It has been wonderful. The SENA and Cardo technology is sort of independent from each other. There are some ways to bridge them and get these 2 networks to talk together. It looks cumbersome to me. So in general, I would say choose one of those 2 networks, probably based on the style of headset and the reviews that you read on the headset. Choose that network and stick with it, okay? We have used the Cardo technology once. We used it with our Gator in Colorado when we were out on that big snowpack with the tracks. We had success with it. Unfortunately for then, we were required to wear helmets per contract for the track company. And so we couldn't use these over-the-ear ones. We had to have those helmets. It was just difficult to find the right
style for that helmet. If you're riding a motorcycle all the time, you've got the little Velcro attachments that you can put right in, and you can put those little speakers right by your ears, and the mic attaches right down there on your helmet. It's perfect for that if you have that technology. Thing is, we're not going to use that in our scenario. There are some specific forestry attachments for forestry helmets. These two, both the SENA TuffTalk and the Stihl Advance Procom, come in a hard hat version. So if you need to wear a hard hat per regulation, those are available in both of those. This, of course, is not as an industrial of a solution here, this Expand Mesh. This is more for an office environment, I think, where you still need to communicate over a long distance, but you don't need to block out the background noise.
The user interface on these products is dramatically different enough that I feel like I must go into some detail. Obviously, you can download the manuals online so you can see how they work. You can see all these buttons yourself. But since they're so different, I feel like I need to go through that a little bit. The Stihl unit has 5 buttons on it that are relevant. Okay, it's got 3 on the left-hand side. The middle one is the power button. To get the device to come on or go off, you just hold that middle power button for a second or so, and it comes right on and tells you hello, and the mesh intercom automatically comes on with the Stihl unit. So you hand this to somebody that hasn't used it before, you tell them to put it on their ears first, press that middle button until she talks to you, right? And then it will come on, and pretty soon they'll be talking to you through their microphone. The other thing you have to tell that newcomer is get that mic close to your mouth, and we'll go over that more in a few minutes. The other 2 buttons here on the left are the volume buttons, up and down. Those work just like you would expect. The only 2 buttons on the right side, there's one in the center here, and that's to answer phone calls. And then there's one where your thumb hits. Perfect location for it, by the way. I really like this. That's to mute the microphone. So let's say you want to talk to someone face-to-face for a moment while you're working overall, but you just want to mute your microphone. Or maybe you just want to cough or burp. Anyway, this is the mute. So those are all the buttons that are on this device. It has the simplest user interface of any of them, by far. This is the TuffTalk-M. It only has 4 buttons. Okay, you might say, well, 4 buttons, that's better than 5. It should be easier to handle. Well, it should be, but it's not. If you use this thing every day, you won't have any issue at all with it because you'll remember. But if you don't, you'll have challenges with it. In order to get this thing to power on, you press the middle button and the plus button, the volume up button, for 1 second or a little bit more. You think I'm pressing the power button. No, it's not a power button. It's the power button and the plus button. And that's hard to remember. And then even once you get it turned on, the mesh intercom is not turned on. There's another button down here, the 4th button, which turns on and off the mesh intercom system. 4 buttons, the plus and minus on the outside, just like the Stihl, the center button, which does several things. It also answers the phone, and then the mesh on and off button. And I'm not sure if you can mute the mic outside of just disconnecting from the mesh or not. I haven't figured that out. I'll go look at the book, and if so, I'll tell you the buttons right here. The Expand Mesh functions in nearly the same way as the TuffTalk-M. You have the center button and the plus button you have to press together and hold for a second to turn it on. You also have a separate button. They usually call it the M button for the mesh itself that you have to turn on every time. So you have a 2-step process. First, you have to hold the center and the plus. She'll talk to you. Then you have to enable the mesh to be able to actually communicate. So I think that's more complicated. And if I haven't used this device in, for me, an hour, then I forget how to use it. But for a lot of people, it'll probably be several weeks before you forget. But it is kind of frustrating to me that it's not obvious how to turn it on and off. All 3 of these devices can connect to your phone. They show up as a standard Bluetooth device. You do that pairing just the same as you would do with any device, and it works easily. There are specific apps for each device. Each one uses a separate one. Even the 2 SENA devices use different applications. One of them is for SENA Industrial, one of them is for SENA Outdoor. So yeah, it's a different app for each device. Each app has several controls the controls seem to, in general, behave properly. You can set the mic sensitivity. We'll show you what the mic sensitivity means in a minute, but it's basically how much background noise it's going to ignore before you talk. You can adjust the relative volume on the Stihl app, at least, between your audio, say your podcast or your music, and the incoming intercom. So it's a relative adjustment there, and then you can have an absolute adjustment as to how loud you want your headphones to be, and that's what the push buttons are here, as well as a slider in the app. All of the apps have the volume control. It appears that the Stihl app has a little more control of the relative volumes and some of that control than what I see in the SENA apps. But the SENA apps appear to have some more control on other areas, perhaps because they make the technology, they've just exposed a little bit more of it to themselves. I don't know, but they have some other control. When you receive a call, the Stihl and the SENA products behave differently, and I don't know which one I like the best. Let me just see if I can explain how it works. As soon as it detects a call coming in other words, you can hear the ring, right? As soon as you hear that ring, you get disconnected from the mesh network at that moment. So you cannot talk to the mesh network once you hear that ring coming in. Even if you don't want to answer the phone, there's just no way for you to talk. After you've answered the phone is where the difference in behavior begins. On the SENA product, you're totally disconnected from the mesh. You cannot hear what the other team members are talking about. You cannot hear anything except your phone call. On the Stihl product, you can continue to hear what's going on in the mesh network. So that means everything that's going on around you, you can hear. In my case, Christy talked to Tom, talked to Randall, talked to Rex, talked to whoever, but I can't talk back to them. I have no way, because I'm in a call, I have no way to talk back to them and say, hey, I'm in a call. I can't deal with this right now. So that's the difference in behavior. In the Stihl product, you can still hear the mesh, which might be better for safety, right? I mean, somebody could say, hey, Tim, don't run into that, whatever, right? And I would hear them. But on the other hand, it's quite annoying because you're hearing those loud voices and you can't hear your call, or you can't concentrate on your call. The most annoying part of this is common to both of them, and that is from the moment it rings, your mic is disconnected from the mesh. Well, the moment that phone rings is when I want to announce to the team, hey guys, I've got a call coming in, I need to take it, right? And that way they'll know I'm not in the network right now, then I'm going to be away for a while. And then when I hang up the call, I could come back and say, yeah, guys, I'm back now. And everybody would understand. What I experienced with the Stihl product is when a call comes in, I'm on the phone and everybody else in the mesh is saying, hey, Tim, have you taken your headset off? Is your battery dead? Hey, Tim. And then they yell louder and louder and louder, and all of them. And I can't hear what's going on the call at all, right? Well, they're not doing anything wrong. They're just realizing that they're not able to communicate with me, and they're wondering what's going on. That same phenomenon happens on the SENA, but if you're wearing the SENA, you don't hear it because you don't hear any of the mesh. Well, I don't like either of those answers, but I think this could be fixed by not disconnecting your mic from the intercom until such time that you've actually answered the phone. I wish both products would change that, but that's the way it works. Both of these SENA products, I believe, work just the same on that, and the Stihl, has the slightly different that it reconnects the mesh, or always connects the audio from the mesh while you're in a call. The Stihl Advance Procom wins on battery life easily, I would say, on the ratings and their spec sheets, as well as what we've experienced in reality. Can't say that our tests have been, pure, as in we haven't just connected them and kept them on intercom to see how long they run down. What we have done is used them in a lot of all-day project and just realized what they can actually do. And then we've done the same with some of the SENA products. Maybe not quite as much, but enough to understand the battery life. The Advanced Procom here is supposed to run between 9 and 17 hours on mesh. I can tell you that in our experience, it'll run over 10 hours easily. I don't know that I've ever seen it say that it was out of battery in a day. I've run them a day and a half before without any problem. They really run
a long time on battery. The TuffTalk-M is rated at 8 hours, and it's rated a little bit longer on the Bluetooth intercom. And we're not going to talk any more about Bluetooth on an intercom here, except to say that there is another intercom technology. We've been talking about mesh technology, the Cardo and the SENA. There's a migration towards a line of products that do Bluetooth intercom, and I don't think it's better than the mesh, but it is less expensive than the mesh. So you're going to see some less expensive products come out, maybe a little more versatile with interacting with all different brands. But anyway, I don't want to go into that too much because I want to focus on mesh products here. The Expand Mesh product is 8 to 10 hours battery life. I haven't tested it enough to know if it's significantly different than the TuffTalk-M. So, but both of those are definitely less than the Stihl Advance Procom. We can say that from real world use. One other spec that's interesting because it differs between the three is the mesh distance, right? The max distance that you can communicate with these devices. The TuffTalk-M is rated at 7/10 of a mile. The Advanced Procom is rated at, it looked like 1/3 of a mile. And the Expand Mesh was rated at 1/4 of a mile. We found there to be some differences in these in practical usage. We're going to do some testing on that in just a minute. Meanwhile, there's one other aspect of this mesh that's quite unique, and that is if you have more than 6 of them in your group, the range gets extended somehow. I assume they piggyback on each other, and we may try to test a little of that in this episode a little later as well. Okay, for this segment, I'm going to show you the standard ambient background noise with the microphones that we typically use. I'll be quiet for just a second. The tractor is at idle. That shows as 80 dB. This shows as 91 dB. So here we are at tractor idle. I'm going to pause, and you'll notice that you don't hear the tractor in the background when I'm not talking. Then when I start talking again, the mic opens itself up, and you can hear the discussion that I'm having. Here we are at full throttle, and I've got the mic as close to the mouth as I can get it. So this is the type of audio you're going to be able to hear through the intercom system if you're on the receiving end, right? Because that's exactly what you are. You're on the receiving end with another of these intercom systems. Now, when I stop talking, in theory, the mic should turn itself off, recognizing that I'm not talking, and you shouldn't hear my tractor at all through this system. As a reminder, these are hearing protection as well, right? They have a noise reduction rating, 24, 25, 26, somewhere in there. And that's going to make it easier for me to hear Christy. So, Christy, could you talk to me and see if I can hear you?
I'm just taking a stroll around the pond and looking at how much the deer have messed up our banks already, which is very disconcerting.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear that with no problem at all, and it is disconcerting that the deer are messing up the pond bank, but I don't know what we can do about it. That's test number 1. We'll try that test now again with me wearing the Stihl headset. Now I want to see if I can hear Christy even over this noise. Christy, talk to me.
Well, I'm walking around the pond, and we've got this stuff growing in the pond that I'm not sure if it's a problem or not. I guess we need to ask Natural Waterscapes.
Yeah, we may need to ask Natural Waterscapes. I can tell you I can hear you very well with this particular device. There's no problem. You've got the Stihl Advance Procom. I've got the Stihl Advance Procom. The tractor's not even a factor, is it?
Not really. It did break up just a little bit for me this time.
Okay. Let's move on to the last one. I think it's going to behave totally differently in this environment. Okay, so tractor's idling again. I've got the Expand Mesh. The mic doesn't quite reach my mouth, So that may be one difference that we're going to encounter. And I have no idea whether you can hear me or not. Christy, can you hear me all the way across the pond?
I can hear you, but not as clearly. It broke up just a little bit.
Okay, and is the background noise of the tractor, how does that compare?
I can hear it a little bit, but it's actually not bad.
Okay, here we go, wide open. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, the tractor's wide open. Throttle now. I have no idea if anyone can hear me, but hey, that's what a test is all about. Talk to me, Christy.
I can hear you. It sounds like you're yelling, probably because you think it's loud. Can you hear me?
I think I've got the volume all the way up. I can tell that you're talking to me, but since I have no hearing protection, this is not effective at all for me.
Okay, since I do have hearing protection.
Wait just a second there. Oh my goodness. I got to find the down arrow. Yeah, okay, now talk to me.
Since I do have hearing protection on, maybe my headset was actually filtering some of the tractor noise.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. We know this Expand Mesh without any hearing protection is not well suited for an outdoor tractor. My question is, will it work well inside a cab? Because one of the big advantages of it is it doesn't push near as hard against my ears, and it's a lot cooler because it doesn't have those tight-fitting cups for hearing protection. Let's try that inside the cab. I'm at wide open throttle in this 2011 model tractor, so it's certainly not a new tractor at all. I'll be silent here for a second and give you a dB reading. It's about 77 dB. So, you know, it's entirely bearable without hearing protection. Christy, you're about, I don't know, 100 feet away from the camera and from the tractor. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
And I can hear you well, too. So this is entirely effective. It'll be interesting to see how the voice quality of this compares to the other units. Okay, this is the Stihl Advance Procom in the same scenario. Tractor's wide open throttle, 77 dB in the cab. By the way, the fan's on second speed, and that makes a big difference. It does get louder in here when the fan's on high. Now, I should mention a couple of things here about this interconnectivity. We're all on the same network, right? Actually, the Stihl Advance Procom, I believe, is using SENA technology, a SENA chip to be able to do this communication. But in the Stihl documentation, it actually warns against using it with SENA devices in the same mesh. We don't really understand why, because it's not clear at all. It says that it may work, but it may give reduced functionality. So I don't know. There could be something there. We have not experienced anything. If anything, they all seem to interrupt together fine. We just don't see any issues with that. Christy, can you hear me, and do I sound any different than I did with the Expand Mesh?
Hear you. I think you sound a little clearer, but it's not real distinguishable.
Okay, and to be clear that we're using a SENA product to do this recording. So there's inter brand communication going on right there, right? Okay, next up, going to be the SENA TuffTalk-M. The microphone on this particular device is shorter than on the Stihl Advance Procom. So the TuffTalk-M has a shorter mic. I cannot get it very close to my mouth. You'll have to evaluate for yourself whether you can tell the difference in the audio quality on that or not. Christy, how can you hear me? Does it sound good?
I can hear you. It sounds good. However, I do hear a background noise.
Okay. Do you hear it now when I turn the fan off? Do you still hear that background noise?
Yes, I do.
Good.
Now I don't. What did you? Oh, it came on, went off, came on, and went off. Whatever it was.
So let's make this clear. Anytime I make an unusual noise, the microphone is going to start picking up, right? Every time you hear a door open or close, or if I then you'll be able to hear the background. So I'm going to stop talking for just a moment.
Okay.
And then I'm going to start again. And in that interim, you should hear the audio level go down.
the audio level did go down to nothing, and then once you made a noise, I heard that background hum again.
So that's how everybody's able to be on the mesh with none of our equipment noise bothering us. You'll only hear the equipment noise from the person talking, and then it is reduced by noise reduction technology that really seems to work pretty well on both of these product lines. It does not work as well on the Expand Mesh because I believe that device is not meant to handle loud noises as well as these other two hearing protection enabled devices. I'm going to ride around a little bit on Johnny, and so we can get some range testing with this device. The first thing I'm going to do is ride back toward our shop, and that's on the other side of our house. And we have had some issues communicating from the pond to the back side of the house in the past. Christy and I wear these when we're mowing, and so we notice that when we get a certain distance apart, and there's obstructions in the way, we do have some communications in. So we'll illustrate that, see what we come up with. Okay, here I go, going for a little drive back around to the shop. Let's see if you can continue to hear me. It is interesting that SENA and Stihl have chosen to use different side for their controls and different side for the microphone. Now I've still got good line of sight of Christy, so there shouldn't be any problem. We don't see much trouble line of sight for quite a long way.
Yep, I still got you.
But we may begin to have trouble when I get behind the house here. So what do you think, Christy? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It's like the old Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I think I may have heard a little breakup there. Talk to me.
I hear a little bit of distortion.
Okay, so I'm behind the shed now.
Oh, that's a long ways.
Now you're breaking up significantly. I'm having trouble making you out at this point.
Interesting, because I can hear you, but I can hear a bit of distortion in the background.
Okay, you were still able to understand me though.
Yes, I was.
I don't know that I could understand you at that same point. I'm gonna go over here, and instead of being Stihl, I'm gonna go through the woods and see if you can hear me a ways through the woods. I haven't taken you through this woods in a long time.
Okay.
We've not had any reason really to go through the woods, so this is a good opportunity. You can still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Yeah, and you're loud and clear. And the point here is that without Stihl being in the way or a house being in the way, just being out in the brush, there's a lot longer range. Still doing okay?
Still doing okay. And for those wondering, I'm just standing out by the pond.
I can't hear her very well at all.
I can hear you.
I don't know if I have her at all.
Interesting.
I think I may have lost.
I have you. Now it's beginning to break up a bit. I think
Okay.
I just lost you.
Okay, but you could hear me that whole time?
For the most part.
Okay. That you're able to hear more. You're receiving on the Stihl. I'm
Yes.
transmitting on the SENA Tough. I'm going to change headsets now. We're going to go to the woods here again and test the range of this Stihl headset. See how it is in the obstructed sense compared to the others.
I can
so
still
far,
hear you.
You're breaking up a little bit, but you can still hear me. That sounds good.
I can still hear you.
I'll even go full drum. Seem to make any difference. Distance.
I do seem to hear a bit more interference in the background when you're not talking or something. Maybe it's...
I'm losing you.
Are you? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Interesting.
Okay, I will back out.
I can hear you with it breaking up a bit.
I'm going to try one thing kind of unique here. I'm going to turn on the SENA TuffTalk-M, and I'm going to hang it in a tree right here.
because I know it has range. I know it can hear us. Let's see if it'll extend the range. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
And I'm going to turn around and see if I can go any further in the woods with that particular device. It's the SENA device hanging well within range of you.
Okay.
And I'm going to go on further back and see if we see any extended range. Talk to me, talk to me.
Well, I'm standing here at the pond watching dragonflies or some sort of insects, and they're just hovering right over the top of the water. They're blue.
Well, you know, the magic is that I'm on the back of the woods.
Oh,
And I've still got
interesting. And it's very clear, actually.
just if you have to have 6 devices connected, I believe that's true.
You were breaking up a little bit on that, but I could still hear you and understand you. That was a little bit worse. Like that was harder to hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
I'm going to hang a device right here in this tree. There's the device hanging in the tree. And here we go. I'm going to go further on back in the woods. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Yeah, we're clear again now.
Okay.
And then here I go further south.
So
I'm headed south, almost to Kentucky.
oh, you're not. You're not even to 65.
I'm not even to our property line yet. But it's still pretty cool. We are experiencing in real life what they promise about the mesh capabilities extending as you add more devices.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
And I'm at the back of our property line out in the open now.
Oh, that's cool. There's 4 acres of woods between myself and Tim at the moment.
It's already a quarter-mile long total, but understand we're going through woods. So this is not disputing the line of sight specifications that the manufacturers say. Rather, this is just kind of saying what they're like in the real world where you are in a wooded area. Can you still hear me?
I can. You broke up just a little bit, but I can hear you.
I'm going to come back through now, pick up our devices. We'll try to repeat that same thing in a line of sight, maybe down the rivers. So the only place we can do a line of sight test is on the road. Okay? And even this line of sight test is not perfect because we got little bits of hills here that, you know, make it in the way of our sight. I am roughly 3/4 of a mile away at this point, and we are out of devices that we can extend. Okay, we've used all the devices we have to extend the range, and this is what we're able to get. It seems like a 1/4 of a mile is about as good as we can get, even with line of sight. And then when we add an extra device, we extend that by about that same amount, maybe not quite that same amount, right? So we're actually seeing maybe 1/8 of a mile per extension. And so you're hearing the audio at that extended amount. I suppose if you had 16 or 18 or however many devices you can logically put together here, that you could make this work at this extended range. But I think in practicality, staying within a 1/4 of a mile is probably the easiest way to guarantee that you're going to be able to talk. Well, that's okay for most projects. I'm going to go back and see if Christy still remembers me.
I was a little disappointed, I must confess, on the range test when we began to string them all together. I thought if we put them all within a 1/4 mile of each other, we would be able to stretch them, you know, a 1/4 mile each. We weren't able to experience that. We really got to about somewhere between a 1/2 mile, 3/4 mile total range out of all of the 7, I believe, devices that we had to play with. So that wasn't quite as good as we wanted, but in reality, if you're going to stay within 500, 750 feet,
you're not going to have any issue with this. And if you do have a little bit of breaking up, you can ask again. It's not as big a deal as when we're actually trying to record it on video and you're trying to hear it in a one-time shot. In other words, you don't necessarily have to have perfect audio in the real world just to communicate with each other, right? An occasional repeat is not horrible. It's entirely possible that because we're mixing brands, we weren't able to extend the range. It's also entirely possible that we weren't doing something right, but that's what we found. I'm not trying to criticize the company or either one of them because, quite frankly, it does what we need it to do. It doesn't really matter to me. 2.8 miles, who would need that? Well, I could see how you would in the motorcycle world, but we don't need that in our application here working together. Now, I want to talk about a couple of, I would say, irregular features, the bugs. No, I don't know. Just functions that don't work quite like you expect at times, especially on the noise canceling versions. That's the TuffTalk-M and the Stihl Advance Procom. When you have two of those units close together and two people try to talk to each other, a lot of times it gets canceled out. And I believe that's because both microphones are hearing the same noise, and so the mesh system assumes it's background noise and blocks it out. Okay? So in order to communicate in that scenario, sometimes we just turn our back on the other person, which, is kind of rude. That's usually how you don't communicate with someone. But in this case, if you'll kind of turn your back, you can actually maybe talk a little lower and maybe hold your hand over your microphone. You'll be able to get them to hear it in that situation. So if you're right by someone and they're not able to hear you, there's a good reason for it, right? It's not just the system's broken. Those noise canceling microphones really are working. The other situation is that the very first word you speak sometimes doesn't get picked up. And if you have a one-word answer, like a quick yeah, or nope, or oh, something like that, you might have answers that are really quick. It might not pick it up. What happens is that your mic sensitivity is something you can adjust here, but your mic might not pick up that first word or might not decide that it was worthy of being transmitted. So at least in the Stihl app, and I believe in the SENA apps as well, it was a little harder to find in the SENA apps. There's a microphone sensitivity level, and it's 1 through 5 on the Stihl. I've set ours all to 4. If I had them set to 3, then we miss the first word a lot of times, and everybody gets frustrated because you end up having to start your communications like this. Okay, are you ready to go? Or you have to lead in with some sort of noise, and it becomes frustrating to everybody. Okay, enough playing around. You guys want to know which one should you buy, and I've got just a couple of more facts I think that will help you make that decision. The Advance Procom is the most expensive one. It's listed at $472. It's available only at your Stihl dealer. And they won't have it in stock. You'll have to order that device. That's, to me, kind of a negative of the Stihl device. It's hard to get. The TuffTalk-M is the closest thing to the Stihl. I mean, it's very similar in design, a little bit more cumbersome in the user interface, maybe a little bit better voice quality. I'll let you guys decide that based on what you see in this audio. But it's $414. We'd appreciate it, of course, if you bought it through our Amazon store, amazon.com/shop/tractortimewithtim. We have a link there in communications equipment for the TuffTalk-M from SENA, as well as for the Expand Mesh. Now, the Expand Mesh is much less expensive, and that's because it doesn't have all of the noise canceling features. At least I believe that's why. It's much less expensive. No noise cancellation here, and I think less noise cancellation in the microphone. But from our observations so far, we're finding the voice quality from the microphone on the Expand Mesh to be the best of any of them. The other big advantage to the Expand Mesh is it doesn't push on your ears very hard because it doesn't have to do the noise reduction, the hearing protection on your ears. That's a huge advantage if that bothers you. It's also cooler in the same regards. If you've got a cab tractor and you're always working in that cab, that might be the device for you. If you're working outside of the tractor and your wife is in the cab, well, you better get at least one with hearing protection, because you won't be able to hear even if you're not riding on the tractor. The hearing protection allows you to hear the other end of the communication better. Hope that makes sense. The TuffTalk-M is the only one of the three that supports the newer Bluetooth intercom system. Again, we don't know anything about that as far as testing it. We would love to be able to test a product that uses Bluetooth. On the other hand, we're concerned that it might be a little bit more cumbersome. And we find in our environments, we want to hand a headset to someone and expect it to work without them having to do any work to pair it or connect it or whatever. And as long as they don't need to use it on their phone, we can just hand it to them, and when we've got an instant communication link. So that's why we like the mesh type approach. The Bluetooth approach, we just don't know. We expect there's going to have to be some more detailed pairing on that. On the other side of the coin, my understanding is the Bluetooth connections may allow you to work with some of your existing headsets, like if you've bought IsoTunes because of our channel. We love the IsoTunes product. By the way, they just don't have an intercom system yet maybe. So if you've bought one of those products, you should be able to maybe link those to some of these Bluetooth intercom systems that are out now, or who knows, maybe coming in the future. From a software standpoint, I find the SENA TuffTalk-M and the SENA product's just a little bit easier to deal with. It was easier to find the firmware updates, easier to find that type of information. The support site, quite frankly, the website overall for the Stihl product is not great. They don't have the software easily downloadable. Christy somehow found it. I didn't find it under the support anywhere. I don't know where she found it, on a blog, I think. So yeah, that wasn't real encouraging, but we did find it, right? So it was okay. Now, Christy, this has improved our communication dramatically.
Oh my. Especially when we're both on equipment and you can tell me, hey, Christy, come over here with Vinny and power rake a certain area, or just more communication. And it's even when you're in a cab.
Yeah, I mean, you know what you're supposed to do when you're having trouble communicating, right? You do two things. You yell louder and you start flailing. And neither one of those help with the overall state of the marriage.
No, not really. And especially hard if you're trying to operate a machine where you need both hands on, maybe the loader joystick or the steering wheel.
And it's kind of funny because men and women, we behave and we work differently. I asked Christy, do you want me to go up or do you want me to go down? She can't just say up or down. She's got to tell me a whole paragraph. Oh, well, it's a sunny day, and on sunny days we usually go to that. And I say, I can't hear anything you're saying. I need one word, Christy.
I've tried to learn over 32 years.
But that's the point. Now I can actually listen to her waxing on about the weather when I'm trying to find out if I just need to go up or down. And likewise, she can get my rambling about my inability to explain what I'm actually asking her to do, and it just makes it so much easier.
And ask a question, and there's banter there that we can finally understand what truly needs to be done.
Yeah. So if you're on two different machines, or even just one of you's on the machine, a lot of times the plan of attack that's developing as you work doesn't get communicated very well. Right.
And in the other case, I listen to a podcast or music while I'm mowing on the Ventrac. Now, the Ventrac's very loud, so some podcasts don't work. It's just not loud enough to be able to hear it. But I can be listening to music, and at some point when you want to talk to me, it just stops the music, and I can hear what you're saying. And then once we're done with our communication, it starts my music right back up without me having to touch my phone or do anything. And I really like that.
Yeah, just when I get to the best part of my podcast, she starts talking, and that's really how it goes.
Anybody like Tim to come stay with them for a few days?
I think I should mute my microphone now. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Meanwhile, I think we've provided these guys some helpful information.
I think so.
And
It's
we've done.
worked very well for us, especially when we have 4 or 5 people trying to do a job together on machines in close quarters, or even in the field when they were cutting down trees and stuff, and kind of spread out. We could at least know what each other was doing and if each other was having a problem, an issue.
It's well worth it. We haven't had any reliability issues with any of the Stihl devices.
No.
We haven't used the SENAs as much, but we haven't had reliability issues with those yet either. We're very happy with all of them. My number one for you, because of accessibility, would be the TuffTalk-M, but the Stihl Advance Procom's battery life is phenomenal. So
Yeah.
if you can afford that and can deal with getting it through your Stihl store, that's a great product to get.
We've had these for several years. I paired this with my phone way back in the beginning. Now every time I turn it on, it automatically pairs with my phone. You don't have to mess with it again, I would say. And it's been very reliable and easy to use.
Yeah. Now, we're not trying to make this as a sales pitch for these exact products. The Cardo products may be just as good, maybe better. We don't know. We're just trying to say that this has helped us to communicate better and to be able to finish a project and not be one to hit each other.
Exactly.
Because that's really not very good.
Can't put a price tag on that.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on
Tractor Time with Tim.
An honest witness does not deceive, but a false witness pours out lies.
It was hard to say that because of the delay.
Right, yeah. Yeah, there is a bit of delay. Hi, Bullseye. You should have climbed up in the seat of the tractor.
It was sunny up there, wasn't it? It was too bright. It was too bright up there. Yeah. It was too bright.
Get you a little pair. Hello, Bullseye. Can you hear me? Hello.